Ambassador Kethral stood at the observation window of the Galactic Council station and watched the stars. He had done this many times before. In his 400 years of life, he had seen countless species arrive at these windows for the first time. He had watched their faces fill with wonder at the size of the station. He had seen their primitive ships dock at the lower ports, the ones reserved for newcomers who had not yet earned a place among the great powers. Today would be no different. Or so he thought. The humans were coming. They had sent their first message to the Council just 50 years ago. In galactic terms, this was nothing. The Valorian hegemony, Kethral's own people, had been traveling between stars for over 100,000 years. The Kreth Dominion had ruled their corner of the galaxy for twice that long. Even the youngest member of the Council, the Tessari Collective, had been spacefaring for 20,000 years. And now these humans wanted to join. 300 years of space travel. 300 years. Kethral would have laughed if it were not so sad. He turned away from the window and looked at the other ambassadors who had gathered in the greeting hall. There were 12 of them, representing the 12 great powers of the galaxy. They stood in small groups, talking quietly among themselves. Some looked bored. Others looked amused. None of them looked worried. Why would they be worried? The humans were children. Their technology was primitive. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were weak. The Council had seen the reports. Human vessels used simple fusion drives and basic energy shields. They had no gravity manipulation. No dimensional folding, no quantum tunneling. They were exactly what everyone expected from a species so young. "Another newcomer species," said Admiral Vexnar of the Kreth Dominion. He was a tall creature with hard scales and cold eyes. His people were warriors. They had conquered half the galaxy before the Council forced them to stop. "I wonder how long before they beg us for protection." "Be kind," said Counselor Miraset of the Tessari Collective. She was small and delicate, with silver skin that glowed softly in the light. "We were all young once." "Not this young," Vexnar replied. "My people had conquered 3 star systems before these humans learned to make fire." Kethral said nothing. He returned his attention to the window. Something was bothering him, though he could not say what. There was a feeling in the air, a tension. Like the moment before a storm, the station's communication system crackled to life. "Attention all ambassadors. The human delegation will arrive in 5 minutes. Please take your positions." The ambassadors moved to the center of the hall and arranged themselves in a semicircle. This was tradition. When a new species arrived, the great powers would greet them together. It was meant to show unity. It was meant to impress. Kethral took his place between Vexnar and Mirazet. He straightened his robes and tried to look welcoming. This was his job. He was the Valorian ambassador. He represented the oldest and most respected civilization in the galaxy. He had to set an example. The minutes passed slowly. Kethral found himself watching the window again. The human ships would appear there first. They would drop out of hyperspace at the designated coordinates, and then they would approach the station using conventional drives. This was standard procedure. It gave the Council time to scan the vessels. It gave them time to prepare. "There," said Mirazet, pointing at the window. "They are coming." Kethral looked. At first he saw nothing. Then space seemed to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. A flash of light, a tear in the fabric of reality. And then the ships appeared. Kethral's heart stopped. There were 5 vessels. They were not large by galactic standards. The smallest was perhaps 300 meters long. The largest was maybe 500. But their size was not what made Kethral's blood run cold. It was their appearance. The ships were wrong. There was no other word for it. They did not look like ships at all. They looked like holes in space. Their hulls were black, but not the black of painted metal. This was a deeper black, a hungry black, the kind of black that swallowed light and gave nothing back. And they shimmered. The edges of the vessels seemed to blur and shift, as if they existed in 2 places at once, as if they were not entirely real. "What is this?" Vexnar whispered. His voice had lost its arrogance. Kethral did not answer. He was too busy watching his scanner. The device was attached to his wrist, a standard piece of equipment for all ambassadors. It could analyze any ship in seconds. It could tell him everything about a vessel's weapons, shields, and power systems, but right now it was telling him nothing. The scanner flickered and glitched. Numbers appeared and disappeared. Warning messages flashed across the screen. The device was trying to analyze the human ships, but it could not understand what it was seeing. "My scanner is malfunctioning," Kethril said. "Mine too," said Miraset. "And mine," said another ambassador. Kethril looked around the hall. Every ambassador was staring at their scanner. Every scanner was failing. "This is impossible," Vexnar growled. "Our technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. Nothing can confuse our sensors." But something had. Kethril turned back to the window. The human ships were approaching the station now. They moved smoothly, silently like shadows gliding through water. And as they came closer, Kethril noticed something else. The space around them was different. It was subtle at first, a slight distortion in the starlight, a bending of the background radiation. But as the ships drew near, the effect became stronger. Space itself seemed to curve around the vessels, as if they were so massive that they warped reality. But they were not massive. They were small, too small to have that kind of gravitational effect, unless they were not using gravity at all. Kethril felt his skin grow cold. A thought was forming in his mind. A terrible thought. An impossible thought. "Ambassador Kethril." The voice came from behind him. He turned and saw his science officer, a young Valorian named Tethra. She was pale. Her hands were shaking. "What is it?" Kethril asked. "I managed to get a partial reading on the human vessels," Tethra said. "Just fragments. The data is corrupted, but I found something." "Tell me." Tethra swallowed. "The ships appear to be partially out of phase with normal space." Kethril stared at her. "That is impossible." "I know. No species has ever achieved phase manipulation. We have theorized about it for millennia, but the energy requirements are beyond anything we can produce. The mathematics alone would take 1,000 years to solve." "I know," Tethra repeated, "but the data does not lie. Those ships are not entirely in our reality. Part of them exists somewhere else, somewhere we cannot see or measure." Kethril turned back to the window. The human ships had stopped now. They hung in space before the station, waiting, and Kethril could feel them. He could feel their presence like a weight on his chest, like a darkness pressing against his mind. "There must be a mistake," he said. "Instrument error, sensor malfunction. These humans have only been spacefaring for 300 years. They cannot have technology that surpasses our own." "Perhaps," said Tethra, but she did not sound convinced. The station's communication system crackled again. "The human delegation is docking at Port 7. Ambassadors, please prepare to receive them." Port 7, that was a high-level port, the kind reserved for established powers. Kethril wondered who had authorized that. Then he decided it did not matter. What mattered was finding out the truth about these ships. The ambassadors moved toward the greeting platform. Kethril followed, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He was thinking about phase manipulation, about the theories his people had developed over the centuries. If a ship could exist partially outside normal space, it would be nearly invulnerable. Conventional weapons would pass right through it. Shields would be meaningless. The vessel could appear and disappear at will, striking from directions that did not exist in three-dimensional space. And there was more. If a ship could access the phase dimension, it could potentially tap into forces that were invisible to normal matter. Forces like dark energy. Forces like dark matter. Kethril shook his head. He was letting his imagination run wild. There had to be another explanation. The humans were primitives. They could not have achieved what the greatest minds in the galaxy had failed to accomplish. The doors to Port 7 opened. The ambassadors fell silent. A group of humans walked into the hall. There were 5 of them. They wore simple clothing, dark suits with no decoration. They looked unremarkable. Soft skin, small eyes, no scales or armor or natural weapons of any kind. They were exactly what the reports had described. But the woman at the front of the group was different. She was tall for a human, with gray hair pulled back from her face. Her eyes were dark and steady. She moved with the confidence of someone who had seen many things and survived them all. And when she looked at the ambassadors, there was something in her gaze that Kethril could not identify. Was it amusement? Was it pity? Was it warning? Ambassadors of the Galactic Council, the woman said. Her voice was calm and clear. I am Elena Vasquez, representative of the United Human Confederation. Thank you for receiving us. Kethral stepped forward. As the senior ambassador, it was his duty to speak first. Ambassador Vasquez, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you to our station. We hope this will be the beginning of a long and productive relationship between your people and the civilizations of this galaxy. The words were standard, formal, meaningless. Kethral had spoken them 100 times to 100 different species, but this time something was different. Vasquez smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but Kethral saw it, and in that moment he understood something. She knew. She knew that the ambassadors had seen her ships. She knew that their scanners had failed. She knew that they were confused and frightened and trying to hide it, and she was not afraid of them at all. Thank you, Ambassador Kethral, Vasquez said. We are honored to be here. Humanity has waited a long time for this moment. 300 years of space travel, Vexnar said. He had recovered some of his arrogance. That is not long by our standards. No, Vasquez agreed. It is not. She did not say anything else. She did not need to. The silence stretched on. Kethral felt the tension building. The other ambassadors were staring at Vasquez, trying to understand her, trying to figure out why she was so calm. Your ships, Kethral said finally. They are unusual. Are they? Vasquez asked. Our sensors had difficulty analyzing them. I apologize for any inconvenience. Human technology can be unpredictable. It was not an explanation. It was not even an attempt at an explanation. Vasquez was deflecting the question, and she was not trying to hide it. Kethral felt a flash of frustration. In 400 years, no one had ever treated him this way. Species came to the council begging for help. They answered questions. They showed respect. They did not stand there smiling while refusing to explain themselves, but he controlled his emotions. He was a diplomat. He knew that patience was more valuable than anger. Perhaps we can discuss your technology later, he said. For now, let us focus on the formal ceremonies. There will be time for questions afterward. Of course, Vasquez said. We look forward to it. The ceremonies began. They were long and boring, full of speeches and rituals that had been performed for thousands of years. Kethral went through the motions automatically. His mind was elsewhere. He was watching Vasquez. She stood quietly through the ceremonies, listening and observing. She responded to questions with short, polite answers. She revealed nothing about her people or their technology. She was a perfect diplomat, giving away nothing while appearing to cooperate fully. But every now and then, Kethral caught her looking out the window, looking at her ships. And when she did, something changed in her expression. It was not pride. It was not satisfaction. It was something darker, something that looked almost like grief. What have these humans seen? Kethral wondered. What have they survived? He did not know, but he intended to find out. The ceremonies ended. The ambassadors began to disperse. Kethral approached Vasquez before she could leave. Ambassador, he said. A word, if you please. Vasquez turned to face him. Of course. Your ships interest me. I have studied vessel design for many years. I would like to know more about how they were constructed. I am afraid that information is classified, Vasquez said. But I can tell you that they have served us well. Against whom? The question slipped out before Kethral could stop it. He had not meant to ask, but now that the words were spoken, he could not take them back. Vasquez was silent for a long moment. Her eyes searched his face as if she was deciding whether to trust him. Ambassador Kethral, she said finally, do you know why humanity developed space travel? To explore, to expand, the same reasons as everyone else. No. Vasquez shook her head. We developed space travel because we had no choice, because something found us, something that existed in the spaces between stars, something that wanted us dead. Kethral felt a chill run down his spine. What are you talking about? Not here, Vasquez said. Not now, but soon the council will learn the truth. And when you do, you will understand why our ships look the way they do. She turned and walked away, leaving Kethral alone with his thoughts. He stood there for a long time, staring out the window at the human ships. They hung in space like dark omens, their hulls drinking in the starlight. And for the first time in 400 years, Ambassador Kethral of the Valorian hegemony felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear. 3 weeks had passed since the humans arrived at the council station. 3 weeks of meetings, negotiations, and endless questions. And in all that time, Ambassador Elena Vasquez had revealed nothing. Kethral sat in his private office and stared at the reports on his desk. His intelligence officers had been working without rest. They had scanned the human ships from every angle. They had intercepted human communications. They had even tried to bribe members of the human delegation. Nothing had worked. The ships remained a mystery, the humans remained silent, and the council was growing frustrated. "This is unacceptable," Admiral Vexnar said. He stood in the center of Kethral's office, his scales rippling with anger. "We have welcomed these primitives into our station. We have offered them trade agreements and protection treaties, and they refuse to share even the most basic information about their technology." "They have not refused," Kethral said quietly. "They have simply avoided the question." "It is the same thing." "No, it is not." Kethral leaned back in his chair. "A refusal would be direct. It would be honest. What the humans are doing is different. They are hiding something. Something important. Then we must force them to reveal it." Kethral looked at the Kreth Admiral. "And how do you propose we do that?" Vexnar smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "The Kreth Dominion has a tradition. When we meet a new species, we test their strength. We challenge them to demonstrate their military capabilities. It is a matter of honor." "You want to challenge the humans to a weapons demonstration?" "Yes." Kethral considered this. It was not a bad idea. In fact, it might be the only way to learn the truth. The Council had no authority to demand that humanity reveal their secrets. But a challenge of honor was different. If the humans refused, they would lose face. They would appear weak, and no species wanted to appear weak before the great powers. "Very well," Kethral said. "Make the challenge, but be careful. I do not think these humans are as primitive as they appear." Vexnar laughed. "You worry too much, old friend. I have been fighting wars since before these creatures learned to walk upright. Whatever technology they have, it cannot match the power of the Kreth Dominion." He turned and walked out of the office. Kethral watched him go and felt a strange sense of unease. He hoped Vexnar was right, but somehow he doubted it. The challenge was issued the next day. Vexnar stood before the full council and spoke the traditional words. He called upon humanity to prove their worth. He demanded a demonstration of their military capabilities, and he offered one of his own ships as a target. The council chamber fell silent. Everyone turned to look at Ambassador Vasquez. She sat in her chair, calm as always. Her expression revealed nothing. For a long moment she did not speak. Then she smiled. "The Kreth Dominion honors us with this challenge," she said. "Humanity accepts." A murmur went through the chamber. Some ambassadors looked surprised. Others looked pleased. Vexnar looked triumphant. "Excellent," he said. "We will conduct the demonstration in the Theta 7 system. It is empty of intelligent life. We will not be disturbed." "That is acceptable," Vasquez said. "I will provide one of my battle cruisers as the target. It will be fully armed and shielded, but its crew will be evacuated. This is a test of technology, not a battle to the death." "Understood. You may bring as many ships as you wish. We will observe from a safe distance." For the first time, something changed in Vasquez's expression. Her smile grew wider. And Kethral saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. "One ship will be sufficient," she said. The chamber exploded into noise. Ambassadors shouted questions. Advisors whispered urgently to their leaders. Even Vexnar looked startled. "One ship," he repeated, "against a Kreth battlecruiser?" "Yes. You understand that our battle cruisers are the most powerful vessels in the galaxy? That their shields can withstand nuclear bombardment? That their armor can survive a collision with a small moon?" "I understand." Vexnar stared at her. Then he laughed. It was a harsh sound, full of contempt. "Very well, human. One ship it is. I look forward to watching it burn." He turned and walked out of the chamber. The other ambassadors followed, still talking among themselves. Within minutes, The room was empty except for Kethril and Vasquez. Kethril rose from his seat and approached the human ambassador. "You are either very confident or very foolish," he said. "Perhaps both," Vasquez replied. "A Kreth battlecruiser is not a small thing. It took them 30 years to build. Its weapons can crack planets. Its shields have never been broken in battle." "I know. And you believe one human ship can destroy it?" Vasquez looked at him. Her eyes were dark and deep, like pools of black water. "Ambassador Kethril," she said, "in 3 days you will see what humanity is capable of, and then you will understand why we do not fear the Kreth Dominion." She stood and walked out of the chamber, leaving Kethril alone with his thoughts. 3 days later, the demonstration fleet gathered in the Theta 7 system. It was an impressive sight. Over 50 vessels had come to witness the event. There were sleek Valorian cruisers and heavily armed Kreth destroyers. There were elegant Tessari science ships and massive Gorath cargo haulers. Every major power in the galaxy had sent representatives. And in the center of it all, hanging in space like a monument to war, was the Kreth battlecruiser. It was enormous. Nearly 2 kilometers long, with a hull of black metal and weapons bristling from every surface. Its shields glowed with a faint blue light. Its engines hummed with power. Even empty of crew, it looked deadly. Kethril stood on the observation deck of his flagship and stared at the battlecruiser. He had seen these vessels in action before. He had watched them tear through enemy fleets like a knife through paper. The thought of a single human ship facing one seemed absurd. "The human vessel is approaching," his science officer reported. Kethril turned his attention to the display screen. A small dot was moving toward the battlecruiser. As it came closer, the details became clear. It was the same type of vessel he had seen at the council station. Black hull that swallowed light. Edges that blurred and shifted. A shape that seemed wrong, somehow incomplete. The humans called it the Prometheus. "Magnify," Kethril ordered. The image expanded. The Prometheus filled the screen, and Kethril felt the same chill he had felt 3 weeks ago. The same sense of wrongness. The same fear. The ship was not large. Perhaps 400 meters long, a fraction of the battlecruiser's size. Its hull had no visible weapons, no obvious shield generators, no external systems of any kind. It looked almost peaceful. But Kethril knew better than to trust appearances. "All ships, this is Admiral Vexnar," a voice said over the communication channel. "The demonstration will begin in 60 seconds. All vessels are advised to maintain a safe distance. The human ship has been warned that we will not intervene if they are destroyed." Kethril heard laughter in the background. The Kreth officers were amused. They thought this would be a joke. A primitive species embarrassing itself before the great powers. Kethril did not laugh. He watched the Prometheus and waited. 30 seconds. The Prometheus continued to approach. It moved slowly, almost lazily, as if it had all the time in the world. 15 seconds. Kethril gripped the railing of the observation deck. His hearts were beating fast. He did not know what was about to happen. But he knew it would be important. 10 seconds. The Prometheus stopped. It hung in space facing the battlecruiser. 2 vessels. One enormous, one small, one bristling with weapons, one seemingly unarmed. 5 seconds. Kethril held his breath. "Begin." Nothing happened. For a moment, everything was still. The battlecruiser floated in space, its shields glowing, its weapons charged. The Prometheus remained motionless, its dark hull drinking in the starlight. Then the space around the battlecruiser began to change. It was subtle at first, a slight distortion in the light, a bending of the background stars. Kethril thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, but then the distortion grew stronger, and stronger, and stronger. The battlecruiser's shields flickered. Their blue glow turned red. Warning lights began to flash across the vessel's hull. The great ship shuddered, as if struck by an invisible blow. "What is happening?" Vexnar's voice came over the channel. He was no longer laughing. "What is that human ship doing?" No one answered. No one could answer, because no one understood what they were seeing. The Prometheus was not firing weapons. It was not launching missiles or directing energy beams. It was simply reaching out with something that could not be seen, something that could not be measured, something that existed in a realm beyond normal space. The battlecruiser's shields collapsed. They did not flicker and fail like shields normally did. They imploded. They folded in on themselves, drawn toward the center of the ship by forces that defied physics. The blue glow vanished in an instant, leaving the battlecruiser naked and vulnerable. "Impossible," someone whispered, but it was not over. The battlecruiser began to crumple. Its hull bent inward, as if squeezed by a giant invisible hand. Metal screamed and tore. Weapons shattered. Engines exploded. The great ship that had taken 30 years to build was being compressed like a ball of clay. Kethral watched in horror. He had seen many things in his 400 years of life. He had witnessed wars and disasters and the death of stars, but he had never seen anything like this. The battlecruiser continued to shrink. 2 kilometers became 1. 1 became half. The ship was folding in on itself, collapsing into its own center of gravity. And still the Prometheus did not move. It simply hung there, dark and silent, as it destroyed the most powerful warship in the galaxy. Finally it stopped. Where the battlecruiser had been, there was now a sphere, a perfect sphere of compressed matter, no larger than a small transport. It floated in space, slowly cooling. The faint glow of superheated metal was the only evidence that it had once been a vessel of war. The demonstration was over. The communication channel erupted into chaos. Admirals shouted questions. Scientists demanded explanations. Politicians screamed for answers. But Kethral heard none of it. He was staring at the sphere of compressed metal, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. The Prometheus had not used weapons. It had used something else. Something that could reach through space and crush a warship like an insect. Something that manipulated gravity on a scale that should have been impossible. Unless it was not manipulating gravity at all. Kethral remembered what his science officer had said 3 weeks ago. The human ships were partially out of phase with normal space. They existed in 2 realities at once. And in that other reality, in that hidden dimension, there were forces that the Council had only theorized about. Dark matter, dark energy, the invisible architecture of the universe. The humans had found a way to access it, to control it, to use it as a weapon. And if they could do that to a battlecruiser, what could they do to a planet, to a star, to an entire civilization? Ambassador Kethral. The voice cut through his thoughts. He turned and saw a communication screen flickering to life. Ambassador Vasquez's face appeared on the display. She looked calm, almost sad, as if she had done something she did not want to do. "I hope that demonstration was satisfactory," she said. Kethral found his voice. "How? How did you do that?" "I think it is time for the Council to hear the truth about humanity," Vasquez said. "Call a meeting. We have much to discuss." The screen went dark. Kethral stood alone on the observation deck, staring at the sphere of compressed metal that had once been a battlecruiser. The watching fleet was silent now. The laughter had stopped. The arrogance had faded. For the first time in recorded history, the great powers of the galaxy had seen something that terrified them. And Kethral knew that everything was about to change. The council chamber had never been so full. Every ambassador was present, every advisor, every military officer who could find a seat. They packed the room from floor to ceiling, filling every available space, and they all stared at the same person. Ambassador Elenana Vasquez stood at the center of the chamber, alone. Behind her, a massive display screen showed images of the Prometheus, the dark hull, the shifting edges, the impossible technology that had crushed a battlecruiser like it was nothing. Kethral sat in his usual place among the senior ambassadors. He had not slept since the demonstration. He had spent the night reading reports, studying data, trying to understand what he had seen. But the answers eluded him. The physics did not make sense. The technology should not exist. And yet it did. "Ambassadors of the Galactic Council," Vasquez began. Her voice was steady, but there was a weight to it, a heaviness that suggested she was about to share something painful. "You have asked for an explanation. You have demanded to know how humanity developed our technology. Today, I will tell you the truth." She paused. The chamber was silent. Even Vexnar, who had been humiliated by the destruction of his battlecruiser, said nothing. He simply watched with cold, angry eyes. 217 years ago, Vasquez continued, humanity made first contact with alien life. But it was not the kind of contact we had hoped for. It was not a meeting of equals. It was not an exchange of knowledge and culture. She touched a control on the podium. The display screen changed. A new image appeared, and Catherall felt his blood turn to ice. The image showed something dark, something that was not quite there. It looked like a shadow given form, a piece of night that had learned to move. Its shape was wrong. It had too many angles, too many dimensions. Looking at it made Catherall's eyes hurt. "We call them the umbral," Vasquez said. "They exist in the dark matter substrate that underlies all of reality. They are not made of normal matter. They do not live in normal space. They exist in the spaces between stars, in the void that fills 95% of the universe." A murmur went through the chamber. Dark matter was theoretical. Everyone knew it existed. It held galaxies together. It shaped the structure of the cosmos. But no one had ever seen it. No one had ever interacted with it. And certainly no one had ever met creatures that lived within it. "The umbral discovered us by accident," Vasquez continued. "Our early spacecraft generated unique energy signatures. They attracted attention. And the umbral came to investigate." She touched another control. The image changed again. This time, it showed a planet, a blue and green world with white clouds and silver cities. Earth, the human homeworld. "First contact occurred on September 15, 2187, Vasquez said. "An umbral scout emerged from dark space near our moon. It was curious. It wanted to study us, to understand what we were." Her voice grew harder. "But the umbral do not think like us. They do not value life the way we do. To them, normal matter is primitive, inferior. We were like insects to them. Interesting, perhaps, but not worthy of respect." The image changed again. Now it showed the same planet, but something was different. Something was wrong. A dark stain was spreading across the surface. Cities were disappearing. Continents were going dark. "The umbral attacked without warning," Vasquez said. "They emerged from dark space in dozens of locations simultaneously. Our weapons could not touch them. Our shields could not stop them. They existed in a dimension we could not reach. They struck from angles that did not exist in our reality." Catherall stared at the images. The destruction was total, absolute. He had seen many wars in his long life, but nothing like this. This was not a battle. This was extermination. "In the first 24 hours, we lost 3 billion people," Vasquez said. Her voice was flat now, controlled. "In the first week, we lost half our population. Our military was destroyed. Our governments collapsed. We were facing extinction." She paused. The chamber was utterly silent. "But humanity did not die," Vasquez said. "We survived. And then we fought back." The image changed again. This time it showed something different. A laboratory, scientists working frantically, machines being built, experiments being conducted. "The umbral made a mistake," Vasquez said. "When they attacked us, they left traces of their technology behind, fragments of dark matter, pieces of equipment that had fallen out of phase with their dimension. We studied these fragments. We learned from them. We reverse-engineered technology from creatures that should have been beyond our comprehension." "Impossible," someone said. Catherall did not see who. "You cannot reverse-engineer something you do not understand." "We did not understand it," Vasquez agreed. "We still do not fully understand it. But we learned enough. Enough to build ships that could exist partially in dark space. Enough to create weapons that could strike at beings made of dark matter. Enough to survive." She looked around the chamber. Her eyes met Catherall's, and he saw something in them that he had not expected. Not pride, not triumph. Grief. "The war lasted 53 years, Vasquez said. 53 years of fighting an enemy we could barely see. 53 years of losing colonies and ships and people. By the end, Earth's population had fallen from 12 billion to 2 billion. Our outer colonies were gone. Our fleet was reduced to a handful of vessels." "But you won," Catherall said. He did not know why he spoke. The words simply came out. "We did not win," Vasquez replied. "We survived. There is a difference. The Umbral withdrew. We do not know why. Perhaps we had become too costly to destroy. Perhaps they found something else that interested them. Or perhaps they simply grew bored. She touched the control again. The display went dark. That was 164 years ago, Vasquez said. Since then, humanity has rebuilt. We have expanded. We have improved our technology, and we have waited. Waited for what? Vexnar demanded. For the Umbral to return. The words hung in the air. Kethril felt a chill run down his spine. He understood now. He understood everything. Humanity had not come to the Council seeking protection. They had not come looking for trade or allies or knowledge. They had come with a warning. You believe the Umbral will attack again, Kethril said. We know they will, Vasquez replied. The Umbral are not gone. They are everywhere. They exist in the dark matter that fills this galaxy. They watch, they wait. And when they decide to move again, nothing in normal space will be able to stop them. Nothing except your ships, Counselor Miraset said softly. Our ships can fight them, Vasquez said, but we are not many. 47 vessels. That is our entire dark matter fleet. It is not enough to protect the galaxy. It is barely enough to protect ourselves. The chamber erupted into noise. Ambassadors shouted questions. Advisors demanded answers. Military officers argued about strategy and defense. The carefully maintained order of the Council dissolved into chaos. Kethril sat in silence, thinking. The Umbral. Creatures that lived in dark matter. Beings that existed in dimensions the Council could not see or understand. They had nearly destroyed humanity. They could do the same to anyone. And the Council had no defense against them. All their great fleets, all their advanced technology, all their thousands of years of progress. None of it mattered. Against the Umbral, they were as helpless as humanity had been 200 years ago. Silence! The voice cut through the noise. Kethril looked up and saw Grand Chancellor Vortek rising from his seat. He was old even by Valorian standards. His scales were gray with age, but his voice still carried authority. The chamber fell quiet. Ambassador Vasquez, the Grand Chancellor said, you have told us of a threat that could destroy everything we have built. You have shown us that your people possess technology that could defend against this threat. What is it that you want from us? Vasquez looked at him. An alliance, she said. True equality. Not the patronizing arrangement you offer to younger species. Not trade agreements and protection treaties that keep us dependent on your goodwill. We want to stand beside you as partners. And in return? In return, we will share our technology. Not all of it. Not immediately. But enough to help you defend yourselves. Enough to give you a chance if the Umbral return. The Grand Chancellor was silent for a long moment. Kethril could see him thinking, weighing the options. An alliance with humanity meant acknowledging them as equals. It meant giving up the comfortable assumption that the elder races were superior. It meant changing everything. But the alternative was worse. We will need to discuss this among ourselves, the Grand Chancellor said finally. This is not a decision that can be made quickly. Of course, Vasquez said. Take whatever time you need, but I would suggest you do not take too long. Why? Vasquez turned back to the display screen. She touched the control one more time. A new image appeared. It showed a map of the galaxy. Thousands of stars connected by trade routes and communication networks. The great civilizations of the Council spread across the spiral arms like a web of light. But in the corners of the map, in the dark spaces between the stars, something was moving. Faint traces of energy, subtle distortions in the fabric of space, patterns that should not exist. These readings were taken by our long-range sensors over the past 6 months, Vasquez said. The Umbral are active again. They are moving. They are watching, and they are getting closer. The chamber was silent. We do not know when they will strike, Vasquez said. It could be years, it could be months, it could be tomorrow, but they will come, and when they do, you will have to decide whose side you're on. She stepped away from the podium and walked toward the exit. At the door, she paused and looked back. Humanity fought the Umbral alone once, she said. We survived, but we paid a terrible price. If we must fight them again, we would prefer not to do it alone. She walked out, leaving the Council in stunned silence. Catherall stared at the map on the display screen. The patterns in the dark spaces seemed to pulse and shift, like something alive, something waiting. He thought about his people, his world, the civilizations he had devoted his life to protecting. All of it could be swept away by creatures from another dimension. Creatures that the greatest powers in the galaxy could not even see. Unless they accepted help from a species they had dismissed as primitive. The universe was stranger than Catherall had imagined, more dangerous, more terrifying. And humanity, the newcomers everyone had underestimated, might be the only thing standing between the galaxy and annihilation. He rose from his seat and walked to the window. Outside, the human ships hung in space, their dark hulls flickering at the edges. They looked wrong. They looked impossible. They looked like hope. Catherall made his decision. He would speak to the Grand Chancellor. He would argue for the Alliance. He would do whatever it took to prepare for what was coming, because the Umbral were out there, and the darkness between the stars was no longer empty. The first attack came without warning. Colony World Tasari 7 was a peaceful place. It sat at the edge of Tasari space, far from the trade routes and political centers of the galaxy. 12 million souls lived there, farming the rich soil and harvesting the crystal forests that made the planet famous. They had never known war. They had never needed to. At dawn on the fourth day of the harvest season, the sky turned black. It was not an eclipse. It was not a storm. It was something else. Something that spread across the atmosphere like ink poured into water. The colonists looked up and saw darkness descending. They tried to run. They tried to hide. It did not matter. The umbral swept across the planet in waves. They emerged from the dark matter substrate that existed everywhere, passing through walls and shields and bunkers as if they were not there. Normal weapons could not touch them. Normal matter could not stop them. They simply reached out with appendages made of shadow and pulled people apart. 12 million souls, gone in 6 hours. The Council learned of the attack when the communication relay went silent. They sent a patrol fleet to investigate. The patrol found nothing. No bodies, no wreckage, no signs of battle, just empty cities and silent forests under a sky that had returned to normal. It was as if the colonists had never existed. Ambassador Catherall received the report in his office aboard the Council station. He read it 3 times, hoping he had misunderstood, but the words did not change. Tasari 7 was dead, and the Umbral had returned. He called an emergency meeting of the Council. The ambassadors gathered in the great chamber, their faces pale with shock. Many of them had dismissed Ambassador Vasquez's warnings as exaggeration. They had convinced themselves that the Umbral were a human problem, not a galactic one. They had been wrong. "We have confirmed 18 separate attacks in the past month," said Admiral Vexnar. He stood at the central podium, displaying a map of the affected regions. All in the outer territories, all targeting isolated colonies and outposts. Combined death toll, approximately 200 million. The number hung in the air. 200 million lives, erased without a trace. "Our fleets have been unable to engage the enemy," Vexnar continued. His voice was flat, defeated. "The Umbral do not exist in normal space. Our weapons pass through them without effect. Our shields do nothing to stop them. We are fighting shadows with swords." "Then we must find different weapons," said Counselor Miraset. Her silver skin had gone dull with grief. Tasari 7 had been her people's colony. 2 million Tasari had died there. "There are no different weapons," Vexnar said. "Not in our arsenals. The Umbral exists in a dimension we cannot reach. We have no technology that can affect dark matter. We have no science that can even detect it reliably." "The humans can detect it," Catherall said quietly. Every eye turned to him. "Ambassador Vasquez warned us this would happen," Catherall continued. "She told us the Umbral were active. She told us they were watching. And she told us that humanity had developed technology to fight them. The humans are primitives," someone said. "Their fleet is small. Their population is nothing compared to ours. Their primitives destroyed a Kreth battlecruiser without firing a shot," Catherall replied. "Their small fleet survived a war against these same creatures. Their nothing population rebuilt their civilization from the ashes of near extinction. I think we should listen to what they have to say." Silence. Then Grand Chancellor Vortex spoke. Contact Ambassador Vasquez. Tell her the Council requests her presence immediately. The human ambassador arrived within the hour. She walked into the chamber alone, her face grave. She had heard about the attacks. She had been expecting this moment. Ambassador, she said, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. The Umbral have returned, the Grand Chancellor said, as you predicted. Yes. You said your ships could fight them. Is that still true? It is. Then we need your help. It was not a request. It was not an offer of alliance. It was an admission of defeat. The greatest civilizations in the galaxy were asking a species of newcomers to save them. Vasquez looked around the chamber. She saw the fear in their eyes, the desperation, the pride that had been shattered by an enemy they could not touch. We will help, she said, but there are conditions. Name them. First, humanity must be recognized as a full member of the Council, not a junior partner, not a protected species, equal status with every other civilization represented here. Done, the Grand Chancellor said. Second, all military forces in the affected regions will be placed under Joint Human Council command. We will coordinate strategy. We will share intelligence. We will fight together or not at all. Done. Third, after the war's over, humanity will share our dark matter technology with the Council. We will teach you how to build ships like ours. We will give you the means to defend yourselves. This caused a stir. Several ambassadors whispered to each other. Technology sharing of this magnitude was unprecedented. It would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. And what do you want in return for this? The Grand Chancellor asked. Nothing, Vasquez said. We want nothing. We are offering this freely, without conditions, because the alternative is extinction. For all of us. She paused. Her eyes swept the chamber. The Umbral do not negotiate. They do not make treaties. They do not distinguish between human and Valorian, between Kreth and Tasari. To them, we are all the same. We are all made of normal matter. We are all inferior. And we will all die unless we stand together. The Grand Chancellor looked at the other ambassadors. One by one, they nodded. The Council accepts your terms, he said. Welcome to the Alliance, Ambassador Vasquez. Now tell us how we stop these creatures. Vasquez touched a control on the podium. The display screen flickered to life, showing a tactical map of the galaxy. The Umbral are testing us, she said. These attacks on outer colonies are probes. They are measuring our defenses, studying our responses. The main assault has not yet begun. How do you know? Because we have seen this before. This is how they started their war against humanity. Small strikes, isolated targets. They want us afraid. They want us desperate. And then, when we are at our weakest, they will strike in force. Where will they attack? Vexnar asked. We do not know, but we have some ideas. Vasquez highlighted several star systems on the map. These are strategic choke points. Control them, and you control movement through entire sectors. If the Umbral want to paralyze the galaxy, they will target these locations. Then we must defend them. We will. But first, we need to understand something. Vasquez's expression grew serious. The Umbral cannot be defeated by conventional means. Your fleets are powerful, but against creatures that exist in dark matter, they are useless. Then what good are they? They can protect civilians. They can evacuate colonies. They can buy time. Vasquez pointed to her ships on the display. My fleet will do the fighting. We will engage the Umbral directly on their own ground. But we need your ships to support us, to rescue survivors, to hold the line while we strike. You want us to be a distraction, Vexnar said. There was bitterness in his voice. I want you to be heroes, Vasquez replied. The people we save will remember your ships. They will remember your crews. They will know that when the darkness came, you did not run. Vexnar was silent. Then slowly he nodded. Tell us what to do. The next 6 months were chaos. The Umbrals struck again and again. They hit supply depots and communication relays. They ambushed patrol fleets and destroyed research stations. They appeared without warning and vanished without a trace. The galaxy had never known an enemy like this. But the Alliance held. Human ships flew alongside Council vessels. their dark hulls flickering beside the silver and gold of elder race fleets. They fought in places that normal ships could not reach, pursuing the umbral into dimensions that no one else could see. And slowly, painfully, they began to push back. Kethral watched the reports come in each day. He saw the casualty list grow longer. He saw worlds lost and worlds saved. He saw the human ships taking damage that would have destroyed any other vessel, their crews fighting with a determination born of bitter experience. They had done this before. They knew what it meant to face extinction, and they refused to let it happen again. Ambassador Kethral, the voice came from his doorway. He looked up and saw a young Valorian officer. What is it? The humans have requested a meeting. They say they have a plan. Kethral stood. A plan. After 6 months of desperate defense, the humans had a plan. Where is the meeting? The war room. Ambassador Vasquez is waiting. Kethral walked through the corridors of the station, passing clusters of officers and diplomats who spoke in hushed voices. Everyone knew that something was coming. The attacks had been growing more frequent, more coordinated. The Umbral were massing for something big. He entered the war room and found Vasquez standing before a massive tactical display. Around her were the senior military commanders from every major power. Vexnar was there, his scales rippling with tension. Miraset was there, her silver skin dim with exhaustion. A dozen others filled the room. Ambassador Kethral, Vasquez said, thank you for coming. What is this plan you mentioned? Vasquez turned to the display. It showed a region of space at the edge of the galaxy. Empty, dark, the kind of place where nothing lived. We have been tracking Umbral movements for months, she said. Their attacks seem random, but they are not. They are all coming from the same place. This place. She pointed to a point on the map. It looked like any other patch of empty space, but when Kethral looked closer, he saw something strange. A distortion, a ripple in the fabric of reality. What is that? We call it the threshold, Vasquez said. It is a tear between normal space and dark matter space, a door that the Umbral use to enter our reality. As long as it exists, they can keep sending forces through. As long as it exists, we cannot win. Can it be closed? We believe so, but it will require everything we have. Vasquez outlined the plan. It was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. The combined fleet would draw the Umbral's attention with a massive assault on their forward positions. While the enemy was distracted, the human dark matter ships would strike directly at the threshold. They would use their phase technology to reach the tear between dimensions and destroy it from the inside. If we succeed, Vasquez said, the Umbral will be cut off from our reality. They will still exist in dark matter space, but they will not be able to reach us. We will be safe. And if you fail? Vasquez's expression did not change. Then we will die, and the Umbral will sweep across the galaxy without opposition. The room was silent. Everyone understood what she was saying. This was the final battle. Everything would be decided here. When do we move? Vexnar asked. Tomorrow, Vasquez said. The threshold is growing stronger. We have days, perhaps hours, before the Umbral launch their main assault. We must strike first. The commanders looked at each other. Then one by one they nodded. Tomorrow then, Kethral said. May we all see the stars again when it is over. He did not know if any of them would survive, but he knew that they would fight, because the alternative was unthinkable. The combined fleet gathered at the edge of known space. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Over 3,000 vessels from more than 100 species floated in formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. Kreth warships hung beside Valorian cruisers. Tassari science vessels shared space with Gorath dreadnoughts. Ancient enemies who had fought each other for millennia now stood together, united by a common threat. And at the center of the formation, like shadows among the stars, were the 47 ships of humanity's dark matter fleet. Ambassador Kethral stood on the observation deck of his flagship and watched the human vessels. They seemed to flicker in and out of existence, their hulls shifting between dimensions that his eyes could not quite comprehend. After all these months, he still found them unsettling, but now that feeling was mixed with something else. Hope. All ships report ready, his tactical officer said. The fleet is at full strength. Kethral nodded. Full strength. 3,000 ships against an enemy that existed in another dimension. An enemy that could not be touched by normal weapons. An enemy that had already killed hundreds of millions. It did not feel like enough. Communication from the Prometheus, the officer added. Ambassador Vasquez wishes to address the fleet. Put her through. The display screen flickered to life. Vasquez's face appeared, calm and steady as always. Behind her, Kethral could see the bridge of her ship. It was dark, lit only by the glow of strange instruments that monitored dimensions he could not perceive. Commanders of the Allied fleet, Vasquez began. Her voice was carried to every ship in the formation. In a few hours, we will engage the umbral at the threshold. Many of us will not return, but those who fall will not die in vain. She paused. Her eyes seemed to look through the screen, meeting the gaze of every being who listened. 200 years ago, humanity faced the umbral alone. We had no allies, no advanced technology, no hope. But we survived. We survived because we refused to give up, because we chose to fight, even when fighting seemed pointless, because we believed that existence itself was worth defending. Her voice grew stronger. Today, we do not fight alone. Today, the greatest civilizations in the galaxy stand together. Today, we show the umbral what happens when the children of light refuse to surrender to the darkness. She raised her hand in a gesture that Kethral did not recognize, but somehow he understood its meaning. For those who will not see tomorrow, I salute you. For those who will carry on after this day, I envy you. And for the umbral, who thought they could break us, I have only this to say. You chose the wrong galaxy. The screen went dark. For a moment, the fleet was silent. Then across 3,000 ships, voices began to rise. Not in fear. Not in despair. But in something that sounded almost like defiance. Kethral felt it in his own chest. A fire that he had not known was there. A determination that surprised him. He was 400 years old. He had thought he was too old for such feelings. He had been wrong. All ships, he said, his voice carrying across the command channel. Prepare to advance. The fleet moved forward. The threshold appeared on sensors an hour later. It was not visible to normal eyes. It was not detectable by conventional instruments. But the human ships could see it, and they shared their data with the Allied fleet. What Kethral saw made his blood run cold. The threshold was a wound in space, a tear between dimensions that bled darkness into the normal universe. Through it poured the umbral, wave after wave of shadow creatures that defied description. They did not have ships. They did not need ships. They were the darkness itself, given form and purpose. Thousands of them, tens of thousands, more than Kethral had ever seen. By the ancestors, someone whispered on the command channel. Hold formation, Vasquez's voice cut through the fear. The conventional fleet will engage the umbral vanguard. Draw their attention. Keep them focused on you. My ships will break through to the threshold. They will tear us apart, Vexnar said. His voice was steady, but Kethral could hear the strain beneath it. They will try, Vasquez replied. But they have never faced a fleet like this. They have never seen the combined might of the galaxy. Show them what you are capable of. The conventional fleet surged forward. It was chaos from the first moment. The umbral swept through space like a tide of shadow, their forms twisting and shifting as they moved. They passed through shields as if they did not exist. They ignored energy weapons that would have vaporized normal matter. They were everything that Vasquez had warned them about. But the fleet did not break. Kreth warships formed a wall of steel and fire, their weapons blazing uselessly, but their crews refusing to retreat. Valorian cruisers evacuated damaged vessels, pulling survivors from ships that were being torn apart. Tasari science ships projected experimental fields that slowed the umbral advance by fractions of a second. Every species contributed what they could. And in the center of the battle, the human dark matter fleet engaged. Kethral watched the Prometheus and her sister ships tear into the umbral formation. They did not fight like normal vessels. They existed partially in another dimension, shifting between realities with each passing moment. When an umbral struck at them, they simply were not there. When they struck back, the umbral had nowhere to hide. Space bent around the human ships. Gravity waves rippled through the battlefield. The darkness itself seemed to recoil from their presence. For the first time, the Umbral knew fear. "Push forward," Vasquez commanded. "All dark matter ships, form on my position. We are going to the threshold." The 47 human ships gathered into a tight formation. They accelerated toward the tear between dimensions, their hulls flickering with energy that no other species could understand. The Umbral tried to stop them. Thousands of shadow creatures converged on the human fleet, throwing themselves at the vessels with mindless fury. Some of them got through. Ketharal watched as one human ship was overwhelmed, its hull torn apart by creatures from another dimension. Then another. Then another. But the rest kept going. "We have lost the Hermes," a human voice reported. "The Athena is heavily damaged. The Apollo is gone." "Keep moving," Vasquez replied. Her voice was steady, but Ketharal heard the pain beneath it. Each ship lost was a crew she knew, friends she had served with, people who had trusted her to lead them. "We are approaching the threshold. All ships, prepare for phase transition." The human fleet reached the tear between dimensions, and then they did something impossible. They vanished. One moment, the remaining human ships were there, fighting against the tide of shadow. The next, they were gone. Not destroyed, not retreated, simply gone, as if they had never existed. They had passed through the threshold. The battle continued around Ketharal, but his attention was fixed on the empty space where the human ships had been. They were inside now, inside the place where the Umbral came from, fighting in a dimension that no other species could reach, fighting alone. Minutes passed. They felt like hours. The conventional fleet held the line, losing ships by the dozen, but refusing to retreat. The Umbral pressed their attack, sensing victory within reach. And then something changed. The threshold flickered. The darkness that poured through it stuttered and slowed. The Umbral on the battlefield hesitated, their movements becoming uncertain. "What is happening?" someone asked. Ketharal did not answer. He was watching the tear between dimensions, watching it shrink. It happened slowly at first. The edges of the wound began to close, like skin healing over a cut. The flow of Umbral forces diminished, then stopped entirely. The threshold was closing. "They did it," Ketharal whispered. "The humans are destroying the threshold from the inside." A cheer went up across the fleet. Ships that had been fighting for their lives suddenly found their enemies weakening, fading, disappearing. The Umbral caught on this side of the threshold were cut off from their home dimension. They were trapped, vulnerable. They died. The conventional fleet tore into them with renewed fury. Weapons that had been useless before now found their marks. The shadow creatures that had seemed invincible were suddenly mortal. Within an hour, it was over. The threshold collapsed entirely, sealing the tear between dimensions. The remaining Umbral forces were destroyed. The darkness retreated. The galaxy was saved. But the celebration was muted, because as the cheers faded, everyone realized the same thing. The human ships had not returned. Days passed. Search parties were sent to the coordinates where the threshold had been. They found nothing. No wreckage, no survivors, no trace of the 47 vessels that had sacrificed themselves to seal the tear between dimensions. Vasquez and her crew were gone, lost in a dimension that no one else could reach. The council held a memorial service. Every species sent representatives. They stood in the great chamber where Vasquez had first warned them about the Umbral, and they mourned the people who had saved them. Ketharal gave the eulogy. "Humanity came to us as strangers," he said. "They were young, inexperienced. We looked down on them. We dismissed them as primitives who had not earned their place among the stars." He paused. The chamber was silent. "We were wrong. The humans survived something that would have destroyed any other species. They rebuilt their civilization from the ashes of near extinction. And when they could have remained hidden, safe in their corner of the galaxy, they chose to help us instead." Ambassador Elena Vasquez and the crews of the Dark Matter Fleet gave their lives to seal the threshold. They fought in a place we cannot see, against an enemy we could not touch. They saved billions of lives and asked for nothing in return. He looked around the chamber, at the ambassadors who had once mocked humanity, at the military commanders who had dismissed their technology as impossible, at the leaders who had been too proud to ask for help. We owe them a debt we can never repay, but we can honor their memory. We can remember what they taught us." He raised his hand, copying the gesture Vasquez had made before the battle. "The universe is darker than we want to believe, but even in the darkest places, something can survive. Something can fight back. The humans showed us that. Let us never forget." The memorial ended. The ambassadors departed. Life returned to normal, but nothing was really normal anymore. Kethral stood at the observation window of the council station, watching the stars. The human embassy had been closed. Their remaining ships had returned to their home systems. For now, humanity was once again isolated from the greater galaxy. But that would change. The technology sharing agreement remained in force. Scientists from every species were studying the data the humans had provided. In a few decades, perhaps sooner, other civilizations would have their own dark matter ships. The galaxy would never be defenseless again. The door behind him opened. A young Valorian officer entered. "Ambassador Kethral, we have received a transmission." "From whom?" "We do not know. It is coming from outside normal space. Our instruments cannot determine the source." Kethral felt a chill run down his spine. "Show me." The officer activated a display screen. Static filled the image. Then slowly a face appeared. Elena Vasquez. She looked tired, worn, but alive. "Ambassador Kethral," she said. Her voice was distorted, fading in and out. "If you are receiving this, we made it. The threshold is destroyed. The umbral cannot reach your dimension anymore." She smiled. It was a sad smile, a weary smile. "We are still here, somewhere. The surviving ships found a stable pocket in dark matter space. We do not know how to get back, but we are looking, and we are still fighting." The image flickered. Vasquez leaned closer to the camera. "Tell the Council that humanity keeps its promises. We shared our technology. We helped defend the galaxy. And now we will find our own way home." She paused. Behind her, Kethral could see the bridge of the Prometheus. Crew members moved in the background, working at stations he could not understand. "Welcome to the real galaxy," Vasquez said. "We taught you how to live in it. Now do us proud." The transmission ended. Kethral stood alone, staring at the blank screen. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. The darkness between them was empty now, cleansed of the shadow creatures that had threatened everything. But somewhere out there, in a dimension he could not see, humans were still fighting, still surviving, still refusing to give up. He smiled. Some species were simply too stubborn to die.